Hello and welcome to Planet 40k. Today's video is something a little bit different. So I've put a poll up on our Patreon which had 4 options and the patrons voted on which video they'd like to see. So I'm going to start trialling this method of video for a while to see where it goes. So that will cover the Necron videos, the Marine videos and the Death Guard too. So today's video is simply a question: what is the best melee unit in the Necron Codex? So before we begin the video, I just wanted to do a disclaimer that this is purely based on a single opinion and possibly a playstyle. So I'm sure this video will have some people that will agree and some that don't agree, so whack your thoughts in the comments below. And then when this video goes live, and after I've seen some of the comments, I'll probably put a poll out to get a bigger range of opinions to see what the community thinks. Okay, so a lot of the units that we will discuss have actually already been reviewed, so I'm going to presume that you've seen all of those. I'll leave a little playlist in the top right corner for you now if you haven't. So for the video, I'm going to remove the characters, as quite a few of them they're pretty decent, but they've only got so many attacks. And of course the Catan shards get a strong noteworthy mention for being complete beast in melee. But for this investigation, I'm basing it on larger units rather than one model. So let's begin with the points costs, so that we can try and even out the playing field as best as we can. Now this isn't an exact science, as each unit has different points cost per model, so I've tried to keep each unit between 120 and 140 points, all while keeping each unit to its legal unit sizes. So for today's video, I'm going to be using 10 flayed ones as one unit, 9 scarabs, 4 scorpet destroyers, 5 praetorians, 2 canoptic spiders, 4 canoptic wraiths, 4 ophidian destroyers and 5 lich guard. And as I said, all between 120 and 140. So that's what we're working with in today's video. So let's start with the first test, going up against units with a single wound and no armor. Now this isn't a realistic test because pretty much everything in the game will have some sort of armor, but this is just to start us off. So if you were going against toughness 3, again one wound and no armor. So this table here is going to show you exactly how many wounds that they can deal before any saves are made. Now of course in this case there are no saves. So when you're going against toughness 3, as you can see from the table, 10 flayed ones are doing the most damage, followed up by the 4 ophidian destroyers and the 9 scarabs. So I'm going to add in the rest of the columns here for toughness 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So when you look at the stats against every toughness that has no armor and a single wound, the flayed ones here are a clear winner. Now I have taken into consideration their flesh hunger ability to get an extra attack, but even without it, they're easily a winner. The ophidian destroyers aren't too bad either. Now of course this isn't the real picture here. Now as I already mentioned, a lot of models have a save and actually have multiple wounds, especially when they're toughness 5 and above. So I now want to take this data and use it on a regular Space Marine model that has 2 wounds to see how it changes. So this is test 2. So this table shows how many dead models on average you can get from each unit, and the models being Space Marines with toughness 4 and 2 wounds apiece. So the flayed ones on average are getting you 3.1, that's 10 flayed ones. The 9 scarabs are getting 1.7. The scorpet destroyers, there's 4 of them, are getting 6. The 5 praetorians are getting 5. The 2 canoptic spiders are getting 3. The canoptic wraiths are getting 3. The ophidian destroyers are getting 4.8. The lich guard with the war scythes are getting 6. And then the lich guard with the hyperphase sword and shield are only getting 2.8. So when it comes to killing 2 wounded space marines with power armor, the flayed ones lose their edge because they're only killing 3 space marines, whereas the scorpet destroyers and the lich guard with the war scythes are doing double the work. Worth mentioning again that those ophidian destroyers are still in the mix, even though we've changed up the target. Okay, test 3. I wanted to check this out against the bigger and badder models that tend to have a lot more wounds. So for this test, I'm going to presume that the target model has infinite wounds just for this test. We're only interested in seeing exactly how much damage each unit can cause on average. And I'll be doing this from toughness 6 right up to toughness 9. So that should cover all the vehicles and the monsters. Again, I'm going to base this on a 3+ armor save and no invuln save. So looking at the toughness 6 column, you can clearly see that the lich guard with the war scythes are doing the most work with 13.3 wounds on average against toughness 6. The scorpet destroyers getting 9.9 and then the ophidian destroyers are there with 9.7. When you put it up to toughness 7, the war scythes are still doing the work with 10 wounds on average. Again, the scorpet destroyers coming in second at 8.7 wounds, and those ophidian destroyers are there again, 8.5. Putting it up to toughness 8, the war scythes aren't doing the work now because they're only strength 7. This is where the scorpet destroyers come in, they're doing 7.5 wounds on average. However, those war scythe lich guards are still getting 6.7, which is a close second. So the entire table here against monsters and vehicles is throwing up the same results here with the lich guard with the war scythes and those scorpet destroyers. And yet again, those ophidian destroyers in and amongst the top places, which is quite a surprise for me actually. Now I wanted to run one last damage test before we move on to the durability tests. Now I wanted to run the same test again, but this time I want to place an invuln save to see what this does to the results of damage. As AP does have its importance when there is no invuln, but this time I'm going to place a 4+ invuln save in. Now in some cases this may be unrealistic, as some vehicles and monsters don't have that and some do, so it's just a hypothetical test. So running down the toughness 6 column, those Lich Guard with the war scythes are still there at the top of the list, 6.7. The Ophidian Destroyers are actually in second place in that column. Toughness 7, they've actually taken the lead and they are now 5.3, with the Scorpion Destroyers not far behind them with a 4.9 wounds on average. When you put it to toughness 8, those Scorpion Destroyers are still there, 4.3, there's no one really close. So with the invuln save added, it's the same 3 culprits here. The Scorpion Destroyers seem to still hold their ground, especially with the toughness 8 models, and the war scythes, as expected, can really lay into the toughness 6 stuff, as they've got their war scythes which are strength 7 as mentioned. Now those Ophidian Destroyers do fairly well and even top the list at toughness 7, but once they hit toughness 8 they do tend to struggle like the others. So looking at all 4 of the damage tests, we seem to have figured out at least the 3 best candidates for damage. Now we need to look at their actual value on the table, their survivability. Some of these units have a much more survivability rate than others, so we'll be doing their damage for a much longer period of the game itself. Now of course any unit can be focused on and removed from the board at any moment, so testing isn't an exact science, but we can work out roughly how they'll do. So we're going to run a test on how many shots they can take to completely remove those given units from the board if they were fired upon or attacked with. All of this is pre-reanimation protocols, which we're going to be going over in a bit. So if you were to use strength 4 weaponry, whether it's a bolt gun or whether it's just a chainsword, to get rid of that unit of 10 flayed ones it's going to take 60 attacks. Doing it to the Scarabs is going to take 98 attacks. The Scorpion Destroyers 162, Praetorians 135, Canoptic Spiders 162, Canoptic Wraiths 162. Those Ophidian Destroyers don't do very well here at only 72 attacks. The Lich Guard with the War Scythes are 135, and those Lich Guard with the Shield a whopping 216 attacks to clear those 5 off the board. Now being targeted by Strength 4 and no AP weapons here, the Lich Guard with the Swords and Shields are a clear winner, but from the 3 we've been keeping an eye on, the Scorpion Destroyers are a solid second due to their toughness 5. Those Ophidian Destroyers have taken a tumble here, being one of the weakest units in this list. However, their Whipcore Bodies ability has not been added here, which is a -1 to hit. When you do add that ability in, it's actually 96 attacks. So when you start to crank up the pressure a notch by putting the strength to strength 5 and putting a -1 AP modifier on, this is what happens. So those Canoptic Spiders become the most resilient unit now due to their toughness 6, and it takes 108 of those attacks to wipe the 2 off the board. The Lich Guard with the Sword and Shield still hold up quite well, and the flayed ones along with the Ophidian Destroyers are again the weakest. So now one more of these just to crank up the damage again, so it's now a strength 7 -2 AP and 2 damage weapon. So the most resilient now are the Wraiths due to their Wraith form invuln saves. Scarabs also do well due to the amount of wounds they have in a 9-man unit, which is 36 wounds. So from the free survivability test you can see quite a vast difference as soon as you crank up the strength, AP and damage. But the Lich Guard with their Swords and Shields and the Scorpion Destroyers do stand out to me, as they do fairly well in all 3 tests. So on to the final set of tests here before we conclude on the best melee unit. It's something to consider, which is the reanimation protocols and how it affects the unit, which of course is a key ability within your Necron detachment. Now rule of thumb for reanimation protocols is for every 3 models that die from one enemy unit's attack, 1 model should on average get returned to you no matter how many wounds they have. The bigger the wounds, the more dice you have to re-roll for the reanimation protocols. Now although 1 does come back for every 3, this isn't actually possible in some cases due to the unit size not being big enough. So in the examples we have, it's only the Canoptic Spiders that are below 4 models, so they don't have a good enough odds to be reanimating, especially with 6 wounds apiece. Scarabs are also not the best reanimators here, they've got 4 wounds each, so you would need to have lost 3 models, which is 12 damage worth to get 1 back. And we've seen from the survivability tests that they don't always lose 3 in 1 turn. The 2 destroyer units are also pretty poor with reanimation. This is due to their unit size as well as being 3 wound models. They either all die to the same attack or they get chipped off 1 model at a time, which really affects their success rate when rolling for reanimation, as it won't be in your favour needing 3 lots of 5+ rolls from 3 dice. Wraiths unfortunately suffer the same issue, and their 4+ invuln save weirdly hinders the reanimation, as it's not likely that they lose all 3 models in a single enemy attack. Now all the mentioned units I've given a red mark to in this table, just to indicate that they reanimate poorly. Next are the 2 wound models. They do much better. This is due to them coming into larger units, up to 10. So even if they lost 6 models out of the 10, you'll have 12 dice to play with, which should achieve you 4 5+ rolls on average, getting you 2 models back. So this will be your Lich Guard units and your Praetorians. The flayed ones are the only ones from this group of melee units that reanimate quite well, as they can be taken in units of up to 20, so it's very unlikely that they're all going to die in one single attack from an enemy unit. And again, we've seen some figures of how much it will take to remove them, although that was based on a unit of 10. They also have only 1 wound each, so a single roll of a 5+ will stand one back up fairly easily. One final thing to consider with each unit is the method of getting into combat. It's no good being the best swinger on the field, but going at a snail's pace to get there. This table here shows the best methods of getting them into combat on the battlefield. So the foot slogging units tend to be quick enough anyway and pretty resilient. The core units are likely to use Veil of Darkness on a character, and they'll also be getting the character buffs as they are core. Then a couple of these can deep strike 9 inches away and go in for the charge, which does have an element of risk. All the infantry units can make use of terrain, and a few of these have fly too, which is going to really buff their movement, especially jumping over models and other features. So what does this data all mean? Now we've seen that flayed ones are exceptionally good against weak infantry units with barely any saves, but those factions tend to be horde type units such as Orc Boys and Tyraniid Gaunts. So would they win a fight against those kind of units? Potentially yes, but they only move 5 inches and need a method of getting into combat. So their only real method here is the deep strike method. Then it's a 9-inch charge, or 8 if you've used a Novat Dynasty, or Butchers from the custom codes. Now I think with these guys it's all about who gets the charge off first. If you get charged, then you're in a sticky situation. Also worth mentioning that although these types of factions, such as Tyranids and Orcs, are part of the game, they're not the current meta, so competitively speaking, I don't believe flayed ones right now are the way to go. Against the meta, you're looking at the Scorpet Destroyers and the Lich Guard with the War Scythe. They're the meanest in terms of straight up killing Space Marines. Both of our example units killed an average of 4 models per fight phase, with the Ophidian Destroyers and Praetorians not too far behind. Then when you start targeting vehicles and monsters, it's the same 2 units that shined above the rest. So for me that's a huge chunk of the game in a nutshell: Space Marines, vehicles and monsters. If you can deal with those, you're doing pretty well. When it came to testing their survivability, they weren't top of the list, but they were in and amongst other units, almost on par, until it got to the test where the damage was 2, where the Lich Guard with the War Size in particular started to fall, being bottom of the list. Wraiths and Praetorians remain pretty consistent, with Praetorians packing a better punch, but Wraiths being a much tougher unit to deal with. Scarabs, as we kind of predicted, wouldn't do much, but I've only really put them in here for comparisons. Spiders were also not top of the list in terms of most things, but they do have their other uses in the game, much like Scarabs. So really this only leaves the 2 Destroyer units. Now I was really impressed with the Ophidian Destroyers in the early tests, but their survivability is a real issue, hence why they're considered your glass hammer unit, and the stats back that up. They hit almost as hard as the hardest hitters in the book, but they will fall down in a gust of wind, with toughness 4 and only a 4+ armor save. The Scorpet Destroyers on the other hand almost topped the class in every test. They've got plenty of attacks for larger units, they've got plenty of damage for the more tougher units with lots of wounds such as vehicles and monsters. Then they also had the best figures when up against Space Marine meta, which is pretty huge as we keep mentioning. They were second in terms of survivability from the strength 4 attacks, only second to those 2-up armor save Lich Guard with the shields, and then they were more of a mid-ground when the strength and AP increased. So for me they are your best Necron melee unit point for point. Now as we said at the start of the video, it wasn't 100% accurate as the points weren't exactly in line, but the 2 main competitors were exactly 140 points per unit, and so were the Scorpet Destroyers. Now of course there are other variables that we've not considered today, things like the Dynasty Code, the command protocols, the stratagem, plasma sites for the Destroyers, chronomancers for the invuns, Maya will be done on your core units, maybe the Silent King buffing the Praetorians, there's relics, warlord traits, cryptic arcana, there's lots of other ways to keep testing these units. The methods are endless. But I thought I'd just share with you my findings today and urge any of you that are into this type of thing to add some more in the comments below and let some testing continue. If you've enjoyed this kind of content, be sure to hit that like button below, as this did take a lot of brain power and it is something different for the channel, so let me know if you did like it. And if you are new and you've just stumbled upon this in the search menus today, then yeah, subscribe if you want more. We do reviews and tactic videos, not just from the Necron army but all the other new codexes as well, and the supplements. So once again guys, thank you all for watching and I'll see you in the next one.